Hello. We're still looking at the generic functions of EMB. Here we look at one of the EMB datasets. In this case, we'll just select the person's dataset within the personnel management. When we navigate to persons, there are a few functions here which are generic across the system. For instance, the person's label. You see, when we hover over the person's label, we see it says reload person list. Now, we're seeing all the people on EMB, and we have a navigation pagination link which we can just click on to move on to the next page. Say we're coming from a different screen. For instance, if you look at the drop down from more, and we come back to the person's screen, we see if we select like addresses, we don't see any address. This is because our current actions have not caused EMB to show an address which we've selected a person. So if we click on addresses, EMB will reload all addresses within the dataset depending on our access rights. For a system administrator, we have the right to view all addresses within EMB. Now, if we click on this address for Bertrand and we navigate back to persons through the more drop down, we then see there's only one record, which is the owner of the address we selected. As you can see, the size says 1. So this is how the person's label works. And this is similar across all EMB datasets. Now, if we then click on the person's label, that reloads all the people in the people screen. The next function we look at is the search function. Say, for instance, we want to search for a record within EMB. We can easily get this record from typing any letters contained in the name. For instance, Mary. Now it says Mary not found. We try Ashmint. Now we see Ashmint. So if we click on that, then the system just retrieves that person's record and presents it to us as the currently selected record. Actually, it puts it on the top of the list. The next function is the add button. So across all EMB datasets, we have the add use case that allows us add a new record. We will not use the person's record in this case since it requires so many fields to be completed. Let us navigate to the items settings screen. From settings, we go to, from the cells, we go to add new items. Now, we can click on the add button and add a new product or service. In this case, phones. Then we just click save. EMB adds the phones and keeps it on top of the list. In other forms, it might involve typing in several records into different fields. Well, we've used this as an example. Now, we can continue from here because EMB datasets are similar across the entire system. So you can observe that the change, remove, and more buttons are not enabled. This is how EMB works. Normally, to enable these, you will need to select a record. In this case, if we click on phones, you now see that EMB has enabled change, remove, and more. So we can use the change functionality to update an existing record. So we update phones to computers and we save. Now EMB has removed or updated the phones and replaced it with computers. This is only possible if the phones we had before hasn't been involved in any sales or purchases or hasn't been linked with any other record. If it has, then EMB won't let you update it. We'll see that in a different video. The next function we look at is the remove function. Usually, the remove function is not enabled except when a record has been selected. The remove button would allow you remove bulk items or a single item. To remove a single item, ensure the item is selected, then click on remove. EMB will warn you to ensure you actually want to remove the record. And if you want, click on remove and EMB will remove that record. And that is if that record is not linked with any other record. If not, EMB will report with a message saying you cannot remove this item. For a bulk remove operation, you can select 1 or 2 or 3 records or as much records as you want and remove them at the same time. For each time you select, each EMB shows you a message telling you how many records you've selected. Now to remove those records, we'll click on remove. Then EMB will ask you to confirm you actually want to remove the records, and we say yes in this case by clicking on remove. Now, as we said earlier on, EMB says this operation is not around. It's not allowed because it has links. So before you can update the record, you need to remove all the records linked to it. Now, that shows what we said earlier on, that you cannot remove any record that has links. So let us try showing how you can remove records that don't have links. So we add some few records. Banana, snack, meat pie. Or let's use meat. Now we'll remove these 3 records by selecting each of them and clicking on remove. As we can see, we had the other records selected. So to remove those records, we refresh our list and just select the records we want to remove. In this case, meat, snack, and banana, and we click remove. Please note, to unselect those records, you have to click on the dataset's name to refresh the list before you can continue, just as we've done. Okay, we then look at the more functions. This function is used to drill down any item we are currently working on. So if we've selected iPhone 6, by clicking on it on the table, or we've selected car, by clicking on it, then we click on more. Now EMB tells us that no car brands were found. Car brands 0, meaning the car we've selected hasn't got different brands within the system. Now, to also show this using a different screen, let us go to the person's screen. We can do that from the home screen if we want, through the personnel management, or we can do that from the global menu. Now, if we then search for a person, you can see that EMB automatically places a cursor on the search box once you visit any screen. So we search for Bertrand. Now we select Bert, and this EMB brings it up for us as a first record. Now if we click on more, then we'll be able to view records related to Bert, but in this case we haven't got any. So from here, if we can then search for a new record, and we select the record. So in this example, we look at Bertrand. So you can see EMB populates our screen with Bertrand's address, all the orders he's processed, as all the sales he's made, and all items he has bought. We close this so we can navigate back to person screen. Now we've shown all the functions up to the more button. So then we look at we've also talked about the size button. Now we look at the report functionality. If you click on the report, EMB will open the panel for report. This is basically similar for every screen. However, depending on what reports any dataset supports. For the persons dataset, we can actually run reports based on different persons group. So we can see cells. If we click on that, EMB will present to us all the people who are in the sales department. We can do the same thing for people people who are suppliers. In this case, we have 7 people, as you can see from the size. We can also do that for employees. And we have 48 employees. Other ways you could run report is through the search function. So here you can run any report you like by typing in anything you want to search for, and EMB will generate the report for you. In this case, we'll search for Bertrand. As we can see, EMB suggests for us, but that does not mean that if we don't have a suggestion, we can generate a report based on that particular word. So we can click on Bertrand and that will generate a report. It says 10 records found. What this means is for everywhere Bertrand appears throughout the system, EMB will retrieve it and present to us. We can also generate reports from periods of durations. So we can say, for instance, let us look at all customers or employees we've entered into the system since last week. So we go from the 1st to the 8th. And we click on the search button next to the date field. As you can see, EMB presents 6 records. So these records are new into EMB and were entered within the last 7 days. Another functionality we look at is the select all option. As you can see, when you tick that option, EMB selects all the records you have, not including those records you are not dealing with at the moment. Except you want to include those, then you can unselect, reload every record by clicking on persons in this case and select all. That will select all the records. So we unselect this record now, then we look at the next function. We've seen the pagination. EMB shows us the current date and time, the number of records within our data set, the currently viewed screen, how many pages we have, and we can actually navigate through those pages. In this case, we navigate to the end. EMB allows you to choose your page size, so you can decide to view depending on what your configuration is. So in this case, we look at 40. Okay, and EMB shows us 40 records. EMB allows you to print any screen. So you select your printer from here and the print, but we're not printing in this demo. So we close the screen and look at the next function, transfers. EMB allows us transfer records from our file system or from remote sources into our database. This functionality is very important when you buy EMB for the first time. You want to load all records all your business records in the past into EMB. Because the person's record involves adding too much records, we will use a very simple data set. In this case, we'll use item records. So we go to cells, as we did before, add new items. We can also go from the home screen. So here, we're going to put some product types. So from our system, we open up a text file.